Welcome to the OBR postgame show. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is Pete Smith. The Browns fall to the Steelers 27-14 in Pittsburgh, failing to get off of the schneid that has haunted them for 2 centuries now. They have lost 21 consecutive regular season games in Pittsburgh, counting today. There are a number of things to go over. Be interested to see what Pete has positives to take away. Dustin Hopkins continues to struggle. It was a actually pretty critical aspect of staying attached to the Steelers in this game, where you missed the 38-yarder going into the half and the 43-yarder coming out of the half. When you mix that in with the next possession being I think that's if I have this sequence correct here, let me make sure that I have it correct. So Ford returns a 56-yard kickoff return, missed field goal, TD touchdown drive for Pittsburgh, 4th down stopped on what was an unusual I guess it was just a bad play. It didn't go anywhere. They tried to run it to the outside with Ford on 4th down, and then Russell Wilson touchdown pass to Freiermuth. That kind of was the game, that sequence right there. And it was rough. It was a rough day. Jameis finishes 24-41 for 212, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The interceptions are a bugaboo again. What's going on, Pete? What's the good word, sir?
Well, I think Jameis nailed it in the press conference. He said they beat themselves. I had the same reaction. I think most people had the same reaction. I don't think the Steelers were particularly good. I would say in general they are a good football team, but at no point in this game did I feel like they were, an excellent football team and the Browns just couldn't beat them. But the Browns just continued to beat themselves. In fact, the sense I got was literally, and I wrote, like they basically let the Browns beat themselves for about 2.5 quarters and then got tired. The Steelers beat them for a while, and then the Browns took it back to continue beating themselves. Like, it was brutal at times, and obviously I'm not going to get into kicking analysis, but yes, the 2 missed kicks were brutal. And the going from potentially a tie football game, 13-13, to instead be down 20-7, and without even considering that if they make either of those make both of those kicks, the game's just different.
Yes.
And I'm not going to excuse the defense for giving up the plays that led to the touchdown that put them up 20 or put them to 20. But I do think there is a deflating aspect to that. I mean, I don't know how you wouldn't. But that doesn't change the fact that they've still got to do better than that. And it was really what was so frustrating is, like, it felt like the game was over at the third quarter, and then the Steelers were just like, nope, we are going to put you right back into this football game.
Yeah.
And they gave you another chance. Like, they gave the Browns CPR at one point before they again turned the ball over and killed themselves. So, I mean, and that's, to me, the story of the Browns season right now is, in particular these last 2 weeks on the road, is the Browns aren't a good team. They certainly aren't good enough to beat themselves like that and still win. And when they have done this over the course of the season, that takes you from what would have been probably a pretty average team to now a bad team. And until they stop doing that, and obviously there's certain things aren't going to get fixed this year. But this is another situation where a lot of those errors weren't forced. And, that makes the difference in certainly this game and then the season.
In this game, the Browns they had more total yards than the Steelers, 300 to 257. They had more first downs. And then vice versa, they had more penalties and more turnovers, to your point. So while they did gain more yardage and gain more first downs, they the self-inflicting stuff. 9 penalties for 81 yards, turnovers 3-1. So just kind of stuff that the penalties have not been that high, Pete, in recent weeks. That seemed to be something they had gotten a handle on. It rears its ugly head again today a little bit. And then, I hate to say I told you so, but Kadarius Toney returning punts. I said don't let him return punts.
I'm going to stand up for Kadarius Toney on one thing. So to your point, the fumble, terrible, and then the penalty was stupid.
Yes.
But I will push back on this. Kadarius Toney returned 4 punts for 44 yards, including a 19-yard punt. 11-yard average is excellent. Like, you are hoping to get an 11-yard average. So while I don't blame anyone, yourself included, if you're saying, I'm done with this, I'm over it, I want him gone, I don't think the Browns will. And if they get Tillman and Jamari Thrash back, then we'll put him on the practice squad. But, like, that part of it was until he fumbled the ball, until he muffed that punt, we were going to have to talk about Kadarius Toney being a productive, helpful member of this football team. I think he set up one of the missed field goal attempts with a big return. And that was the thing that was frustrating. Like, you could see why they did it in terms of just the juice he had in space. Like, this was Toney being able to be in a spot where he does the things you need him to do without trying to make these convoluted, forced touches or manufactured touches. So if the Browns don't give up on him, I understand. If they do, I also understand. You can't. The Toney penalty was stupid. It was also kind of a weak call, but I understand why they.
It was a weak call, but
you just can't do it. And then you obviously can't turn over the football. And that was that ended the game effectively. They had that, and it wasn't their chances were hardly good in that scenario. They needed a lot to go right, but it was the last gasp effort, and that ended the game. So I'm not gonna shed a tear for Kadarius Toney if the Browns ultimately make the decision to cut him based on this. But, like, up until that point, I was sitting there going, man, the return game has really been a big benefit for the Browns in this game between him and then the Jerome Ford 56-yard return.
Yeah, he did look shifty in his returns, and as you said, he was averaging about 11 a return. He's just a wild card. You don't know what he's going to do, and he just does stupid stuff. That's just kind of the story of his career, right? Like, that he's always just kind of been unhinged when it comes to things like just lobbing a ball at the opponent for no reason after a play and getting a 15-yard penalty, and then, in a key spot, dropping a punt. I said, I don't, run reverses with him all day. But to your point, I guess, he was good returning up to that point. It was kind of a tricky punt to field, but Newsome get hurt on that play? Do we know how injured he is?
We don't know the extent, but he said he hurt his hamstring, and we don't have any definitive answer on that, but it would not surprise me if he's done for the season. Yeah.
The other way the Steelers let them back into the game was the Cordero Patterson forced fumble by Isaiah McGuire, and the turnover ensued on a pass by Winston that Tony Romo, who was terrible today to listen to. If you listen to the TV broadcast, I'm sorry, your ears are probably bleeding. But the point he did make there was that the check down to Ford was open right over the middle, and you'd have to agree with him there that he didn't need to try to force that throw in there at that point. Is that just something that we've kind of talked about all week? Is that just something that you're not gonna shake out of him?
Well, that depends, because in the post-game press conference, he seemed happy with both of his decisions. He was unhappy with the result. I can understand the second interception in terms of what he was trying to do. First one, I cannot. The first one was real bad. Screen took way too long, just had to get out of the play and move on. But for that one, Elijah Moore had a spot up the seam, He tried to fit the ball over the second level defender, but overthrew it. Okay, but like, I agree with Tony Romo's point. You didn't need to force it. You could have just sort of taken it. But listen, at least that is the type of interception where I would sit there and go, okay, those are the type of aggressive interceptions like that are better than the ones than 3 of the other 4 we've seen from Jameis in the last 2 weeks. Namely, the screen, or the 2 last week, the one on the out route, or the one at the line of scrimmage, basically on a check down. Yeah. They were poor risk reward evaluations. Like the upside was very little. At least here you can say the upside was high. If he does fit that ball into Elijah Moore has room to run, potentially right in the red zone with an opportunity to score. Okay. Like, I don't like the decision. I agree with Tony Romo's assessment, and let's talk about that. Tony Romo gave one very good history lesson on Jim Schwartz, talking about Jimmy Johnson, where the wide down came from. He also gives vibes-based analysis that means absolutely nothing and is often wrong. He complimented Mike Tomlin on managing the clock while he was butchering use of his timeouts, after he had butchered his use of the timeouts in the last time these two played, in which case a whole bunch of people came out, national people, and crushed Mike Tomlin for his poor use of timeouts and management. This is arguably the biggest thing Mike Tomlin gets wrong. Later, Tony Romo complimented Mike Tomlin on not allowing his players to get stupid penalties, which is absolutely insane. They get lots of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. George Pitt, the walking unsportsmanlike conduct penalty was out of the yapper himself was out of the game with a hamstring injury. These are just preposterous on his face. Or talking about how TJ Watt was getting great pressure on one side with Alex Highsmith was on the other, and they show the replay. TJ Watt is easily handled by Jack Conklin. Yes. And then Alex Smith's going in from the other side. Like, he couldn't help himself because and some of this was not his fault. Some of this was the director who kept insisting on showing JJ Watt in the freaking box, which I didn't care about. Yes, it was brutal. And people can criticize Tom Brady. I understand he's largely boring in some ways. His voice is not very good for this. As I say, mine's no better. But at least Tom Brady's accurate. He hits the target. Tony Romo's just throwing stuff out there all wild, and it means it's just wrong. So that part was frustrating. But yeah, I mean, look, I come out of this game, and my opinion on Jameis Winston is unchanged. I think he is the easiest way to move forward into next year. And you can improve things around him to help minimize the mistakes, or at least lower the cost of those mistakes. But here again, and the Steelers deserve a ton of credit. Their defensive line is fantastic. They stopped the run really well, and the Browns were, I guess, better than they have been relative to running the football. But they kept hammering it. They were 30th in the league entering in the game in rushing. They haven't had a guy get over 70 yards in 20 games. Nick Chubb had a couple nice runs. Okay, but it's brutal. And when you're constantly operating where the other team knows what you're going to do, it's really difficult. And you're going to lend yourself to these situations. And again, I say this as I'm criticizing Jameis Winston for doing the unforced ones. He's not even these are not situations where he's just making bad throws or, guys are just making great plays. He's just bad risk reward analysis. So I can see why the Browns would be able to talk themselves into the idea that he can be better. I also don't. A lot of people want to talk about the style for which Kevin Stefanski wants in a quarterback. I think he likes having these guys who are really aggressive, believing, and to I think with evidence to suggest he can get them to play better. Whether it's been Joe Flacco or Jameis Winston or some of these others, even Baker Mayfield when he was with the Browns. So I think he likes having these guys who are aggressive and willing to make plays. I think he's willing to sort of get them figured out and try to make them play their best football. And to his undying credit, he has. Now, these interceptions still lose you the game, and we can blame Jameis for what he needs to be blamed for. But I still look at this and go, one, I still think he's the best path forward. And two, if he wants to take a bat to his prospective value in the offseason a little bit, I'm okay with that. The Browns save a little extra cap they can afford. We were coming out of the last 2 weeks, people were going, oh, we can never be able to afford Jameis Winston. They'll be fine.
Yeah. I did think in this one, and I agree with you that um, I do think that Kevin likes guys like this, partially because they will make those throws, and Kevin believes that he's gonna have guys open in his scheme, right? And like the problem that you had with Watson, and even as you mentioned Baker, was at times they wouldn't make those throws or press those throws to guys that looked open down the field, right? And that's certainly not the issue here. I did think that he was more inaccurate today than I have seen him. I'm not saying that I disagree with you. I do think he has a good path forward. I just think that for some reason today he seemed to kind of be all with the high passes. Especially in the first half, he was missing high and long a lot on passes. And now maybe he was trying to avoid double coverage or just throw the ball away. May have been the case a couple times, but that's given him the benefit of the doubt there. But yeah, I mean great throw to Njoku, great throw to Judy early, which as you pointed out in our chat thing, that's a very difficult throw to make, to turn your hips like that and throw the ball up the field. Judy had the one catch early, was quiet for much of the rest of the game, ends with 5 for 64. Njoku 7 for 42. Elijah Moore 3 for 34. Jerome Ford 3 for 19. Prochet had 2 catches. Akins with 1. Mike Woods with 1. Pierre Strong with 2 for 9. In the run game, Chubb had 11 carries for 48 yards. Winston with 4 carries for 28 yards. And a nice little zone read with Winston a couple times got him loose on the backside, right? For some rushing yards there. And Jerome Ford 10 for 28 on the ground. The ground game just has to be better. And that has to be a major focus of the offseason. Just has to be.
Yeah. So your point about Jameis sort of looking inaccurate, I thought today he looked uncomfortable. I thought it was very reminiscent of the Chargers game where he looked muddy pocket, just gave him problems.
Yeah.
I give him some credit in that he didn't make bad situations worse that much, though he did take a couple weird sacks where he just put his head down and charged forward. That was bizarre to me. That was Watson-like in that regard. But he didn't make a catastrophic mistake in those situations. He also was sort of neutralized as well. So it felt a lot like that. And the two things those have in common: pressure up the middle. He seemed largely okay being able to sidestep and maneuver around pressure to the side or up the field, but up the middle, he's a guy who does not look comfortable. And yeah, that looked problematic. And yeah, I mean, the run game it's a plague at this point. And what's frustrating is like, I know I do want the Browns to add more running back talent. Like, I don't question that as an aspect of it. But I watch a game like today from Jerome Ford, and I sit there and go, if he gets blocking, I think he will be successful because you see what he does with the ball in his hands. And I think, Nick Chubb is obviously not Nick Chubb at this point. But I think if they block better, he will, and he gets healthier, that he can be better. But I also would like to keep adding running back help. But yeah, I mean, the offensive line's a whole thing for them. And that was, I think the Steelers had the same problem. They struggled at a lot of the time because the Browns were able to clog up running lanes. Even though Jaylen Warren got off a couple nice runs, Najee Harris had a couple nice runs. Like, we can complain about the Browns defense, and there were a couple plays they gave up. By and large, they were okay. They were just put in awful situations. They didn't give up a ton of yards. They didn't close as well as I would have liked on some of those drives. But, it's clear where the issues in this game were. It was turning the ball over and wasting opportunities to put points on the board.
Yeah. I mean, they were able to move the ball into the red zone with ease. I mean, no, pretty much. I mean, they were down there a bunch of times. They just were unable to capitalize when they were down there. And then that sequence in the second half, which just kind of turned the game on its head after the 2 missed field goals. So, I mean, what do you do about Hopkins at this point? I mean, are they forced to stick with him contractually, or can you look for a new kicker in the offseason?
I mean, at this point, this season is what it is, so I don't care. I mean, if he's going to suck, this is the year for him to do it.
Right.
But he's obviously got to get squared away for next year, or you're going to run into this situation. It will play out probably a lot like it did when they acquired Hopkins. Go through the entire offseason with him, and then, if they have to bring in somebody at the start of the season, essentially. I would think that Hopkins will be able to get squared away. I don't assume he's broken. I assume some of it is health, whatever he's dealing with. But ultimately, you got to get squared away. There's a financial component of it, or he wouldn't be here already. But this is the thing. This is the same conversation you end up having constantly. People desperately want some long-term answer at kicker, and it rarely works out that way. It's just a constant churn. It's a relief pitcher. And for the most part, unless you're Mariano Rivera, you are usually basically every other year where you have a great year. And Dustin Hopkins had the best year of his career last year. And now he's having what I have to assume is the worst of his career this year. You assume that health and everything else will cooperate, and he will at least just regress to the mean of whatever average is for that and be okay. Ultimately, what my desire here is you stop having to rely on the kicker as much, and you score more touchdowns, and you do the things that make it so the kicker is not an issue. But obviously in this game, it's a huge swing because you miss 2. Chris Boswell hits both of his, and suddenly that helps widen the gap of the game. And that the punt, the last Browns punt was a product of not trusting Dustin Hopkins. They just turned it down and got a good punt, but that is a product of we don't trust it. We're not going this way. Now he obviously got in there to kick the extra point, but ultimately, he's not. They don't feel comfortable with him, and the fact that Jameis Winston has been as effective as he has in a lot of these games has been helpful for them. But it's also because they don't trust the kickers like they should.
Yeah, absolutely. What happened on the 4th down play with Ford, where they elected to go? Did I see you commenting on that? Where was that an audible to go to him to the outside to the sweep or whatever, where he gets tackled 5 yards behind the line on 4th down?
So what I assume is that Jameis Winston had a sneak call that checks into another play, whether he just goes or it's just part of the play and the sweep is part of it. He got up to the line of scrimmage. The Steelers were in a bare front. They had 3 guys right over the center and the 2 guards right to clog it up. And that when the Browns went to snap it, they had a guy blitz to take away that sweep action, or however you may have just read it, whether or not it was a blitz or not. But either way, they were aggressive to take away that play, and they made it. And right now, especially the game I watched Ethan Postic have, I certainly wasn't just going to try to dare the bear front, because Ethan Postic got just dismantled the entire game, got constantly blown up by linebackers and edge rushers and everybody else. So one, it's a numbers game at that point. He's got to read what's there and either make the call. I think based on the information he had, he made the right call. But obviously the Steelers were up to the task and made the play. And that's what happens when you are able to own the line of scrimmage the way they were. Not unlike how the Browns destroyed the Steelers in the first matchup on 4th down. They owned the line of scrimmage in that game at those points and had the guys necessary to clog up running lanes. They tried it with Justin Fields and some other things, and they were up to the task. The Steelers did a good job. Credit to them. That's all, the symptom of needing to get better up front and being able to commit to those. The Eagles have arguably the best line in football, and they have a quarterback who can squat 600 pounds. The Browns don't. So you can't expect to be able to operate like that. And unfortunately, that's where they are with the state of their line. And even though Jameis Winston is a big boy who can plow forward, he's not Jalen Hurts.
So we've got a super chat from Smallville wanting us to address that Elijah Moore sucks as a route runner, and it was his fault on the interception. That is second by other people who said he did not dive for that pass. I would respectfully disagree. I don't think that he could have done anything there, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
I mean, anytime we see a play that doesn't go right, it's very, maybe he could have dove for it, I guess, but ultimately Winston missed. I mean, he missed the target. He overthrew it. Elijah Moore diving probably wasn't going to save anything, and they intercepted it. Like, pretty simple on that. Threw it up the seam, missed it. In a better pass, not only would it have managed to avoid that second level defender, it probably takes Elijah Moore a little bit further inside to take away that angle. But no, Jameis Winston's got to make a better throw there. I mean, I don't see how you can possibly say that I think you could say it didn't matter. Ultimately, you can drag Elijah Moore into the blame if you want. Ultimately, Jameis misses the throw, and he knows it. So ultimately, that's the bottom line. Jameis knows he missed the throw. Tried to fit in a spot he shouldn't have, or needed a better pass to fit into that hole. But
yeah,
there's a space in between those two defenders. He's got to fit the ball. He did not. But we can blame Elijah Moore if we want, but I think ultimately that's Jameis has to make a better throw on that. And whatever we want to say about Elijah Moore, that's the only target he didn't catch on the day.
So, I mean, Smallville he did track the ball. He did turn and actually reach his arm out as far as he could with his right arm, and it was nowhere close to the ball on the replay. But maybe if you wanted him to be someplace else, categorically calling him a bad route runner is just false. Because
he's a very good route runner. You can say he can certainly be accused of, I guess, at times being a frustrated player who sort of lets that cause him to not give full effort. But I don't know if that's the play to do it on. There have been others in this season. I've absolutely seen that as a valid criticism. But overall, Elijah Moore is a very good route runner, and this was a simple route.
It's
a simple seam route. I mean, that's
yeah.
It's not it's just a seam. A receiver is going up the seam. The Steelers have two guys most likely dropped two linebackers to back up to try to take it away. They had safeties deeper over the top. He tried to fit in the space between them. Like, that is just a traditional seam throw. He tried to fit in between the linebacker and the safety. In trying to get over the linebacker, overthrew it. DB was able to make a play on the ball. And, Elijah Moore is not as big as Jerry Jeudy, for one thing. But, it's a play he's made to Jerry Jeudy, but he's also made better throws to Jerry Jeudy in that situation.
Okay. Yeah, I'll watch it again, Smallville, and see if my mind has changed. They showed the replay quite a few times, but I'll watch it again and see if he did not track the ball. I think Jameis just missed it, but either way, you're entitled to that opinion. And thank you for the super chat and your contribution to the show. All right. Yes. Chef, you want to talk Njoku? Are we upset with Njoku for something? I thought he had a pretty good game today, 7 for 42. And a touchdown. Are we upset with the way that he has played? I think he had a good game today, Pete. David Njoku.
So it's fine. Again, opportunities were limited. I think there were some plays they wish they could have gotten to. I mean, I think the biggest thing that you kept seeing were there were plays where Jameis, either because he had dropped his eyes or gotten flushed, couldn't get the ball to him. Tony Romo made a big point about one particular crosser that he just couldn't find him. But ultimately, he made a hell of a play on that back shoulder throw, the touchdown. I think it was one of the better catches he's had this season. Is this a game where I'm going to sit here and go, David Njoku is one of the best tight ends in football? No, but I think he was more than adequate for what we need him to be. I don't see any kind of gripe overall. I just think, this is a frustrated passing game because the Steelers were able to limit them. And again, being consistently in obvious passing situations did not help. They were able to get some Jameis confused at points. They were able to get pressure on him at points. He made his fair share of great throws, including that touchdown. Overall, I thought it was pretty average performance for him. Nothing great homer about. And I would say the same thing with Judy. And I would say that if that is the like ineffective Judy game where he still has 65 yards and a touchdown, like I'm okay with that. Like if that's what we're going to get to where we're going, that's sort of an underwhelming performance. Great. I'm okay with 5 catches on 6 targets for 64 yards and a 35-yard touchdown, which was a beautiful throw. Not easy to do. Great awareness on his part. That was one where he fit the ball in absolutely beautifully.
All right, folks, it's that time of year to get yourself fit with CoreHomeFitness.com. Get over there now and check out all the new stuff they have. They have the adjustable benches. They have their award-winning dumbbells. Go check out the website. They have U.S. support, fast shipping. They make a great gift for everybody in the family or friend. It's a nice, easy way to set up your indoor gym and make sure that Core Home Fitness is there for you for the 2025 new you that you want to improve on as you make your New Year's resolution to get fit and get stronger. And this is the way you do it right here with CoreHomeFitness.com. You see the adjustable bench here and the amazing adjustable dumbbells. Bring the gym home with CoreHomeFitness.com. I urge you just to go over there and just kind of peruse the website. It's got some amazing stuff and some stuff that you're going to like and can make for great gifts for you and the family. Once again, go to CoreHomeFitness.com and thank them for, covering the show and being a wonderful sponsor to the OBR. All right. Let's flip sides of the ball real quickly here, Pete, to the defensive side of the ball. Any bright spots defensively today that pop off the page for you? I know that Diabate led the team in tackles, so with 7. Did you think that he played a good game? Anybody else that you thought jumped off the page that you were happy with their performance today? Maybe McGuire?
Diabate is just sort of inconsistent at times. There are times where he's really, really good. And then there was one keeper where Myles Garrett goes inside. Diabate is supposed to be there to fill. He was not. And Russell Wilson's able to run for yards and slide. And it looks like Myles Garrett's a dope. Diabate knows he has to be there even right after the play was pointing himself because he knows he's got to be there. But he gets the ball, runs fast, gets the football, and can make impact tackles. I continue to believe he can be a starter next year with JOK. But he's got to obviously continue to keep growing. I just think the range that he offers is exactly what the Browns want. Jordan Hicks, by the way, played really, really well.
Tremendous
game. The only thing I did not like was the one pass that was completed to Freiermuth where it was Greg Newsome's in coverage. It's because Jordan Hicks crashed down to try to collapse on Russell Wilson, who's scrambling, and that sort of left the middle of the field wide open. So Greg Newsome sort of had to try to chase it down, and it ends up looking like the play's on him, and it's not. There's nobody in the middle field when he's supposed to be there. But yeah, Isaiah McGuire is good. Like, he had a good game. I continue to think, one, he had what I thought was a miserable game last week in terms of gap discipline as a pass rusher. He kept going inside, and there's nobody to go out, which kept letting Bo Nix roll to his throwing hand. He did a much better job on that. He also had a really good pass rush that Russell Wilson was able to get off just before his knee hit the ground. Could have been a sack. But the thing with Isaiah McGuire is I just think he is increasingly more and more a division defensive end. He does a really good job, stout at the point of attack, good strength, good power, collapsing the pocket. Does a really good job against Pittsburgh Steelers. He does a really good job against the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens, though his utility against the Ravens is a little bit smaller just because he's not speedy enough to be there all the time to deal with Lamar Jackson, but just in terms of trying to be smart and physical and at the point of attack in the run game is really strong. He just needs to keep developing those other elements. As a second-year defensive end, I'm really happy with what I see from him. He's just got to keep growing. And then, none of that is going to stop me from adding more pass rush help either. I just think that becomes a really good rotational option with potentially him as a rundown base end. And then if they want to move inside or bring somebody else in on the edge in more of a pass rush situation, that's certainly a really enticing idea. And then obviously Myles Garrett, the Steelers threw everything at him throughout the course of this game, chips and all kinds of stuff. And he got the fumble recovery, which the Browns immediately gave away with that interception by Jameis Winston. And then he got the sack late, but his impact overall was stronger than that. He had a couple pressures early that led to some off-target throws. So that part of it was strong. Then, I think there's some inconsistency on the back end, but part of that is George Pickens wasn't playing. And part of it was because the Steelers the Browns were good enough that even though Martin Emerson got beat on the 120-yard catch and they had some other play, the Greg Newsome penalty, by and large, the Steelers didn't do nearly as much as you'd like to think they did. I think they had 140-some yards passing net. So overall, they were up to the task. Between the injuries they have, not having JOK, and some of those other things. Again, I think this is a game where I think, and I'll be curious to see exactly how many snaps he played, but having Juan Thornhill is a big deal. You get a sense of the things that don't happen when Juan Thornhill's in the game, even though you don't hear his name called, because he's not allowing them to just chuck the ball down in the middle of the field. So they just need to keep adding. Just need to keep adding more talent. They need to keep getting more consistent. It's understandably frustrating that they will go from one game where they're really strong to the next where they're not, and there's no sense of consistency. And some of that is just by nature of what Jim Schwartz wants to do. I think the only thing that really frustrated me on defense is I could tell what the Steelers were doing based on how many guys were there to block Myles Garrett. If there was nobody over there to help, it was going to be a screen or a very quick pass or some kind of run. And if there were a lot of guys over there, they were probably going to try to pass. And at times, it was irritating because, you had this situation where nobody was over there to help with Myles Garrett, and yet I see a corner 10 yards off the ball, and they just turn and throw it to him. It's easy money. That stuff is getting to be a little bit irritating. I understand some of that is they are not in a space where they can trust Martin Emerson to just play press man the way they could last year most of the time. But it's not helping him at times. Or the other thing, if he's going to play off like that and they realize, hey, there's nobody helping Myles Garrett, you better be ready to quick trigger and make a play because the ball's probably coming out in position where you can make a tackle right now.
Yeah, 100%. Agree with your assessment there with the Emerson playing off and Serge making a couple points. So listen, there was an OPI call early on. Was that on Mike Williams, I believe, the first time? Yeah. And then OPI called on Mike Woods, which I thought was less of a push off and kind of ticky-tack. And then they got the 50-50 ball to Mike Williams on Emerson, where he clearly pushed off no more or no less than Mike Woods did, but was not called. And then Emerson does get beat by Scotty Miller on a back shoulder where he drags his toes. A really good play, but you like to think that with Emerson's length, he could be over there to at least deflect the ball away. Sometimes he's just not in the right spots. It doesn't feel like. We've talked about this before, and I don't mean to hammer him because I like him a lot. I just want him to get his wits about him. He just seems to be totally lost at times.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this comes down to not trusting technique and whether there's an injury or not. I don't think he's managed to get in a place where he feels good about what he's doing all the time and end up in those plays where now you're desperate and not because you're not trusting your technique, you're doing things that are ultimately not going to help you, and you allow those type of plays. Now that is the reception to the little guy for 20 yards or whatever was just a great play. I mean, I do think Martin Emerson has room where he can be better there, but that was just a really, really good throw. Great catch. I thought maybe they were going to call him out of bounds, just the way his body landed, but they ultimately got it. So credit to them on that. But yeah, I think again, this is a part of the frustrating element of the season is corner play is such a roller coaster in terms of the details and how much, how small of a difference or misstep or whatever misread can make a big difference on the when you get to the catch point. And some of that is because the Browns aren't as consistent rushing the passer as they need to be. That's why they need to keep adding talent to that group. But again, ultimately, Browns defense did more than enough to give the offense every opportunity, or special teams every opportunity to get in this game and win, and they refused to do it.
Browns next week.
Chiefs, baby.
Chiefs at home, right? So the Chiefs will be coming to Cleveland next week with another chance. I don't know if anybody saw Hard Knocks, but Stefanski's playoff speech said, "You want to be in the playoffs? Here's the playoffs." And he pointed at the schedule. And alluding to the tough competition that they play down the final stretch of the season. And although that's not really how it works, Kevin, I get your point. Trying to keep his team playing hard through the stretch, but the final stretch, in which he did get credit for from the Romo and his nonsense today, but they have been playing hard. I thought they played hard today.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you want to say about this team, they're losing because they do stupid things and are sloppy with the football and are making mistakes. They are not losing because they don't care. At no point in this game did I think they didn't care. And again, as much as I'm loath to give Romo credit, he did, again, he emphasized that last play, the interception where Jerry Jeudy, and he mentioned the other guys, Nick Chubb and Wyatt Teller and somebody else, all chasing down that play. Yes, those are and the reason you pick out those clips is because he knows coaches are picking out those clips in meetings and all these other things, and you hammer that. That's the standard. This is the effort. This is who we got to be. And you sit there as a coach and you sit there and go, Jerry Jeudy had the best game of anybody on the team, and he's still out here fighting tooth and nail to try to win the football game, because that's what should happen. That should be everybody. Nick Chubb has every excuse not to do anything. And he's out there trying to fight and win. And that's what you have to do. And the players are in there, and they're in there and they're buying it. And the team certainly has to get better, but and there are things you can criticize about coaching. You can sit there and hate the fourth down. Whatever. But ultimately, I feel good about the direction of the coaching staff. I know there are people who want to get rid of Bubba Ventrone. I know there are people who hate Jim Schwartz now, even though they wanted to give him the head coaching job last year. And maybe Kevin Stefanski will make the determination that they need to move on from some of these guys. That's his call. But ultimately, at no point do I sit here and go, man, they just don't care, or they're playing out the string. I do not see the Jets out here. I do not see the Giants or the Cowboys or some of these other teams that just like have had games where you're just sitting there going, man, this is brutal to watch and sucking the life out of you. And obviously the Browns did that in the first part of the year with Deshaun Watson. But and I think what you end up in a world, if you're going to talk yourself into something, it's basically going, listen, man, if the kicker makes the kicks, we're in the football game. If we don't turn the ball over, we win the football game. And I do think you can, as much as you can be frustrated by those things, it shows. And obviously beating the Steelers the first time, beating the Ravens shows when you do these things correctly, or at least better than you did today, you can win those games and you can have the success you want. So hopefully, nothing would make me happier than them going out and taking down like the Chiefs next week, or winning, beating the Bengals, whatever. Because I do think they can stack these things up and carry them over to the next season. I do think, as we firmly established, they're not blowing up the team. So a lot of these guys will be back. Some of them won't. and they can come out and play much better football next year, in part because of the stuff they're doing this year.
Yeah, listen, earlier there was a comment that said you guys got to tell me that they have a chance to make the playoffs next year because I don't see it.
Yes.
Yeah, they 100% do. Yeah. And they 100% do. They have the ability to go change what needs to be fixed this offseason. They have the ability to get guys healthy that they've been missing all offseason long. They have the ability to, if it is Winston or if it's somebody else, maybe it's Sam Darnold, who looked fantastic today, 5 touchdown passes. No,
I'm recognizing it's not going to happen. Like, and there's this is always the weird dynamic because Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is there. Him and Kevin are very close. They can obviously put in a good word with Sam Darnold. I just think Sam Darnold is going to get paid a lot more money to go to another team than the Browns can afford. And I don't know that and I think Sam Darnold's ultimately going to get a multiple year contract. I think he's going to get a deal that looks a lot like what Baker Mayfield got. $50 million a year. With however many.
You don't think the Browns can do that?
No. Let's put it this way. I don't want to spend $50 million for that.
Oh, 50. You said 50.
50. That's what Baker Mayfield's getting. $50 million.
I was thinking he was probably going to get around 25 tops.
No, I suspect if he plays really well and they do well in the playoffs, I suspect he's going to get like a 3-year, $150 million contract, which is what Baker Mayfield got.
I mean, isn't it possible that Barry, if you wanted to, could backload it the same way so that the money on, if you did want to commit to him for like 3 years and sign to him, that the money would finally hit after the Watson stuff is just off the books? You could time it up in a way to do that.
You could. Is that what you want to do?
I don't know. They got to find a way to win.
I do not. I am more than comfortable with just because one thing I won't rule out, I'm not going to suggest that they're not going to take a quarterback. They could sign Winston and draft a quarterback and feel really good about the quarterback. And if you do that with Sam Darnold, you are not. You are saying if let's say I'm right, if it's like 3 years, $150 million, you're not drafting a quarterback. You're done. You're saying we are good at quarterback. I don't think the Browns are going to do that. I don't think they want to be in that position, especially with the Watson contract. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm just saying I don't think they will. And I'm not, I think Sam Darnold can go. I certainly don't expect he's going to go to the Jets. But I suspect there are going to be teams that are willing to pay him very handsomely to go and start and feel good about his situation. Could be Pittsburgh, if we're honest, because there's nothing. None of their quarterbacks are guaranteed there either. So there's a lot of options. I just think Sam Darnold's going to end up getting a good deal, and I think the Browns are ultimately going to be very content to have Jameis Winston on a cheap deal to help them get through this as they look for the quarterback, try to get one on a rookie deal, build up the rest of the team. Now we'll see what happens. They may Kwesi may call up Andrew Berry and go, "You have to do this," and convince him, and maybe they go that route. I just doubt it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. Listen, you're probably right. And listen, I can live with Winston coming back if they commit to making the interior offensive line, the offensive line as a whole, better, and drafting a running back so that you have a run game to lean on, and committing to winning next year, which they're going to do. I do believe that. So, and I do like Jameis. I'm just saying that I think that they probably are monitoring other situations as well.
Yeah, they're going to look at everything. But I think rather than looking at Darnold, you look at the situation that enabled Darnold. What do they have? They have a really good set of receivers, and tight end. They have a better offensive line, certainly not great with losing their left tackle for the year, but certainly better than what the Browns have. And they have a great defense. And so Sam Darnold can go through a rough patch and they can still win football games. And now when he goes off like this, he's going to look great. But if the Browns had great defense and ran the ball well, and they, had beaten the Steelers, and then they come back and beat the Broncos with those things, we are having the same conversation that people were trying to have, which is, well, there's no way we're going to be able to afford Jameis because he's throwing this much and doing all these things. I think that's a framework that makes much more success, is to recreate the other situation. The Vikings are one great example. The Steelers are the other. Obviously, they were not as good offensively today, but George Pickens, when he's functional, Pat Freiermuth, Calvin Austin, they've got an interesting set of weapons. I think they're going to want to keep getting more and more and more of those weapons. Their offensive line is able to run the ball enough, and they play great defense. The Browns have pretty good receivers. They don't have the offensive line right now. They don't have the running game, and their defenses can be good, but is too inconsistent.
Yeah. I mean, the path to fixing this is pretty simple, right? Or it's maybe not simple, but it's clear. But yeah, and the guy who you want to play quarterback for you next year could very well be Jameis. It could be somebody they draft to sit behind Jameis, like you said, or it could be somebody else. But I think the odds-on favorite is Jameis right now. I will give you that. Just that I would throw it out there that Darnold looked really good today. And it's interesting to keep an eye on. As you wonder, here's my question about this, and I forget if we talked about this the other day. Do you feel like this front office in Stefanski will go into next season feeling like they have to be around 500 to keep their jobs?
I would be stunned if they didn't. I mean, you can't do this again. But I also think that they have no reason to believe they will. I mean, for all the reasons we talked about throughout the year, the injury thing just killed them before the season even started with the offensive line. Deshaun Watson has been an albatross around their neck that everybody is convinced the Browns would have at least a few more victories, if not for him. So no, I don't think the Browns will be in this neighborhood next year for no other reason. Unless they go on a winning streak, they're going to have a fourth place schedule on top of everything else, and that will make a big difference.
Yeah.
They will play teams like the Raiders and some of these other ones where they can pile up wins, and the Browns are, if they can win either against the Bengals or the Ravens, they will go 3-3 in the division again, and that puts them right sort of the mix as long as they take care of everybody else.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. I just think that hitching your wagon to someone as inconsistent at times as Winston can be a risky that would be a risky thing to do. Be like, okay, my job's on the line. We have to go 500 and we're going to roll with Jameis Winston to do it. Now, we've seen some really good Jameis, and I like Jameis, but that's still a scary thing to go all in on. Now, like you said, if you put the right circumstances around him, you probably get a better version of all this, and that's the key to it, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, the same way that like last year, nobody thought the Browns would be able to do anything with Joe Flacco, and the same way that nobody thought they'd be able to do anything with Jacoby Brissett. They managed to get enough out of that position to be competitive, and they can improve the rest. That becomes what the focus becomes. And they're going to have, again, projected 11 draft picks, depending on what else they do. They've got a lot of young talent on this team, even though a lot of people don't want to believe that. They do have a real path forward. They've just got to stay healthy, let's start there, get healthy, then stay healthy, and then just be able to play better football. I mean, I think when you are missing guys like a JOK or something, you start to take it for granted. You forget how impactful they were.
Yeah.
And living with Jermaine Ifedis of the world, it's a tough way to operate. So not having Cedric Tillman in this game sucked. Even though I will give Michael Woods the second all the credit in the world for the one catch he had up the sideline where he managed to tightrope that thing. That was really impressive.
Yeah.
But Cedric Tillman is clearly a better player. They've just got to. There's just a lot of things they need to get better.
I really hope that this concussion, he's missed 2 weeks now with it, and 2.5 games now with this concussion, doesn't set him back after we saw him finally start to make these strides forward. That would be unfortunate. I don't think it'll happen. I just hope that he's able to hop right back in and we see him continue to grow in these last 4 weeks. I think that would be big.
Got to take them each individually. A lot of people have really bad understandings of how concussions work. Heal it all the way. Make sure it's gone, healed, and then you can operate as normal.
He went out in the snow globe game fighting for a first down. So the last Steelers game 2 weeks ago. DeAndre. All right, folks. Listen. 27-14 Browns are losers in Pittsburgh. The reason I wanted this one so badly today was just in a season where, the playoffs weren't really on the line, was to get off these schneids, the 21 consecutive schneid, the 1988 sweep schneid, Pete. These were things I wanted them to be able to just be done with, you know what I mean, going into next season. Things that we wouldn't have to bring up the next time they go to Pittsburgh. That's the unfortunate part about, not being able to pull out this game in my mind, where they kind of gave you chance after chance to get back in it in the second half. I don't think by any means that this Pittsburgh team is going to do much damage in the playoffs personally. I just don't know if they have enough offensive firepower, but they do find weird ways to win. So it'll be interesting to see. Any parting words before we get out of here tonight, Pete?
Yeah, subscribe to the newsletter. Going out every day so you don't miss anything. And then keep an eye on the OBR. There's obviously a story involving sort of the behind-the-scenes stuff regarding Jedrick Wills today. I would tease that there will be something else coming on Tuesday and some more things from behind the scenes coming out throughout the rest of this week. So stay tuned to the OBR, subscribe, and then obviously we will be back. You and I will be back on Wednesday, but tune in for the rest of the week's worth of shows. There's plenty to listen to.
Of course, yes. Monday, Quincy Carrier Live. Tuesday, Dog's House and Garage Beers. Wednesday, The React. Thursday, All Eyes on Cleveland. And Friday, Things I Think I Know. And then back to game day, pregame, and post on Sunday again. Keep it locked. Spam bets coming, Kramer. I see you, brother. Thank you, Chris. And thank you all for hanging out here tonight and talking this thing out as we move on to what should be a fun week to face the Chiefs, when you got nothing to lose. So go try to pull one off at home in front of your fans. And listen, everybody have a wonderful Sunday night for Pete Smith and everybody at the OBR, keeping it locked on the Orange and Brown Report. My name is Brad Ward, and we are out.